Hi guys, hi, hello, how's it going? How you doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today I am doing the next palette reviews in my Palette Roulette series, in which I pick a palette that's in my collection that might also be in your collection, and I utilize it for a week. And I come back to you, I talk to you about my discoveries of the palette, my experiences, if you will. I show you some live swatches, I show you some looks I've been able to create with the palette, and then we pick another palette and we do it all over again next week. And I hope that that sounds like something that you're interested in. I am a lover of all things high-end, colorful beauty and self-care. I work in the beauty industry as a district leader for Ulta, so I get a lot of education in my position. I'd like to bring you that education here on my channel through things like reviews, but I also just like to talk about makeup. So you're going to have a lot of chatty videos on this channel. Please subscribe. I would love to welcome you into my YouTube fam. And oh, by the way, my name is Donna. Did I even say that? I don't think I did. So hi, I'm Donna. Nice to meet you folks. I hope that you'll want to stick around. I hope that you want to subscribe before you go. And with that said, let's roll into this palette review. So it's pretty dusky outside and the lighting is wonky, so I do have a light on right now. Artificial light is not necessarily my bestest friend. It likes to blind me as I'm staring at the camera in the middle of the light. So if I'm looking off afar in the distance, that might be why. Today we are doing a palette review on two palettes actually. One is just a quad, one is actually a palette. And I don't know why I pulled the quad in. This palette definitely had enough shades that I could perform any eye look I wanted to throughout the week, but I did pull in the quad. I did get some use out of both of them, and what we're dealing with today is the Nars limited edition summer unrated palette and the Il Makiage Color Boss quad in Make Moves, and it's blinding you. So there's that. Sorry about the light again. When I review two palettes, I like to review them separately. I am actually going to start with a smaller one because I think it'll not take as long, it'll go super fast, and I was actually shocked by this palette. This is the Il Makiage Color Boss Quad in Make Moves. It is a $42 quad, and it is 0.05 ounces per pan, and there are 4 shadows in it because it's a quad. The packaging is beautiful, silver, metallic, and it does feel like it's metal. It's very heavy. It opens with this lip still intact down here, so it was kind of confusing at first because I thought it opened up like down here, but if you look at the component, you can tell how it opens. I'm just dumb sometimes. So there's that. This one is the one that is in a very like kind of purple pinky color story. They all have mirrors on them, and then on the back of the palette it does tell you the shade names of each one of the shades and then some information about the palette. This palette has 4 shades on the purple side of the color story. It is full pigmentation from the very get, but I would say that some of them are kind of deceptive. Like this pink up here is full pigmentation from the very get, but in certain lights it doesn't look like it's got any pigment at all, so it's very easy to go ham with, which I did. It does appear when you first start putting it on as very lackluster in certain lights. What I would say is certain lights would be the hotel room lighting that I was trying to put my makeup on in over the last week. It did not bode well for this palette, and actually it didn't bode well for me because I just kept packing on the color and packing on the color, and at the end of the day, like when I walked out, got into natural lights, looked at myself in the mirror, I was like, oh my god, that looks so damn cakey because I had put too much on. These really are very nice shadows. They have kind of a really soft texture to them in the pan, but not powdery at all, almost creamy. They are not fallout prone. I did not have any fallout with this palette at all. And even though they have kind of a creamy texture to them, they aren't the kind of creamy eyeshadow that exacerbates texture or looks really bad in an eye look unless you pack it on 100,000 times because you're working with the wrong lighting and think that there's no color packing onto your eyelid. These are super easy to blend, and they build really, really well without voiding. There is absolutely no patchiness in these shades, not even with this dark, dark purple, which I appreciated. And this does work well with or without primer. I didn't find that primer did anything to make a difference in how it performed, either through blend or through longevity. I did get a good 8 hours out of these shadows before I saw any kind of like fading or anything like that in the eye look. There are only 4 shadows in this, so it's not like really hard to digest. It's a very good palette for a one shadow eye look for the most part. I would say you could probably get a couple. These 2 shades over here are more on the lens of like satiny shimmer shades, and these 2 are mattes. They're just really super beautiful. Il Makiage does have 7 different quads on their website, and each one of these quads comes in at $42. They also have 3 8-pan palettes that you can get, and those are $55, so a much better deal, to be honest. There is one quad that I really, really liked. It's called Extra AF. It's a beautiful, like, purpley, pinky color story. I imagine maybe some of these shadows actually are in that palette, although it didn't look like there was like repetitiveness between this shadow palette and that shadow palette. Those are $55. That one is out of stock, so there's that. They also have singles in the same kind of packaging. I do have a couple of those singles. They are beautiful. I first learned about Il Makiage through beauty boxes, and if I remember correctly, are these the guys that have the foundation that's supposed to match your skin tone? Like, it's supposed to like color match to, I don't know, the videos that people post of them putting on a foundation and it's like goes on one color and then just seamlessly blends into people's skin. Isn't that this brand? I can't remember, but they do have quite a few products on their website. As I said, I do have 2 of the single shadows. I have this quad. I also have an eyeliner by them, a liquid eyeliner by them. They're a pretty decent brand. They do seem very luxury. This packaging is heavy, heavy duty. There isn't really a clasp on them, but there is a really decent magnet that holds it shut tight. I did travel with this palette and I had no issues with like it breaking apart, obviously, or the lid popping open, anything like that. So I would say that these are really good heavy duty palettes that you can take on the road with you. So I'm going to swatch the 4 shadows in here so that you guys have an idea of what these shadows look like. So the first one we have here is this, and this is called Hold Up. And it is a really beautiful like icy pink tone. I did wear this quite a bit as an inner corner shade. I also wore it quite a bit as a brow bone shade. It isn't what's in my brow bone today, but you guys can see just how icy pink this is. It is such a pretty shadow, and it actually boded well in working with the Nars palette that I have because it leans on the pink side, and the Nars palette I have is a very warm toned palette. So I did have a lot of fun with this. I could imagine this being a really beautiful highlight also on your face if that's what you wanted to use this shadow for. You absolutely could. It does have a very, very nice texture, so I couldn't imagine this showing up on your face powdery when it doesn't show up on your eyes in that way either. Like I said, it does have a little bit more of a creamy texture to it that is just beautiful, sinks into the skin. Then we have Mood, which is a beautiful like matte pink, and it's kind of got like a bubblegummy pink look to it. And this is the one that, like I said, went on my skin. I didn't really think it had any kind of pigmentation to it. It made me out to be a liar. It had a ton of pigmentation to it. This one, I will say, I probably put 12 layers of it on my eye trying to get it to show. I should have known better. In a hotel room, if their lighting is poor, I will typically do my makeup in front of the window, and I didn't on this day because it was so hot outside. So I didn't want to stand in front of the dang window and sweat to death and put my makeup on. So I didn't, and then I ended up sorry that I hadn't done that because this did look a little bit cakey. But as I said, I put on about 12 layers of it, which was my bad. On a different occasion, I did use it with just like 1 or 2 layers and it looked beautiful. It does build on top of itself really well if you're using the normal amount of layers and not an extreme amount of layers. The next one I have is this one, and it is Entourage, and it is kind of a beautiful rose gold shade. And I think this is probably one of my favorite rose gold shades. It leans a little bit more rosy, a little bit more pink, and it is a beautiful shimmer. And these shimmers are shimmers, you guys, without glitter, which I also love. Coming from a person who has aging eyes, I really just need a beautiful, impactful shimmer that doesn't want to fall out all over my face and have glitter all over the place all day long. So a really beautiful rose gold shimmer. And then we have this one, which is called Clap Back, and that is a pinky swatch, so I'm going to go back in for another layer. This is the deep purple matte in the palette. I do think it's got a little bit of satin to it because it does have a little bit of a sheen, but it still performs very well as a matte in an eye look. It is in my eye look today on the outer corner, and this was the perfect partner to the Nars Summer Unrated palette as that really deep outer corner shade that I wanted, that I didn't really have in that palette unless I wanted to go in for the deepest, darkest brown in that palette. But with all of the pinks and the corals and all the beautiful tones in the Summer Unrated palette, I really did think that that purple was going to partner well with it. And man, it sure did. I used it so much over the last week in many, many eye looks as that deepening shadow. I really think that also this would be a great shadow for like just to wet and use as an eyeliner with some of the looks that I created. This is a wonderful palette. I was actually surprised by it. It makes me want more of their palettes because it's not often that I pick up like an off-brand. Not that Il Makiage is drugstore or off necessarily, but it's a beauty box brand, right? This is how I got familiar with them. This is how I own everything I have from this brand is from a beauty box. And way back in the day, beauty box brands were like whatever, and these days you're finding like Natasha Denona in some beauty boxes, so there's that. But for whatever reason, I had this like stigma on this brand because everything I have from them is from a beauty box, that I didn't think that they were going to be any good. And I really enjoyed this palette. Do I think it's $42 worth of good? You know, I have a hard time with telling you whether something is reasonably priced or not, because like what is affordable to you is going to be subjective to you. I would say if you have $42 to spend on a quad, then this is a really great quad to spend your $42 on. I don't think it's a quad up there with like Pat McGrath quads. You're not going to get anything like uber special out of this quad, but you are going to get a nice one and done eyeshadow palette that you can take on the road with you, that's heavy duty, feels luxe, looks luxe, and works great. Like, I loved everything about that palette. I would probably repurchase it. The one thing I wanted to say about this though too is it does have 5 stars on the Il Makiage website with 4,929 reviews, but I could not make heads or tails definitively on whether those reviews were for this eyeshadow palette or even the quads in a nutshell, because there was a lot of 1-star reviews, if I'm honest, but those 1-star reviews all talked about the wrong shade mostly. And to me, I think, well, maybe that's got to be about their foundation, right? So it appears that 5-star review comes from all of everything on Il Makiage, not just their quads. And that's the only place that I could find a star rating for them. This is the Nars Summer Unrated palette. This is $59, has 0.48 ounces in it, or 0.03 ounces per pan. It comes in at 4.8 stars on the Nars website with 45 reviews, and 4.8 stars on the Kohl's website with 33 reviews. It has a hard black plastic packaging with the back of it showing you the names of each one of the shades, the name of the palette, and then of course its shelf life and whatnot. It does have the pink mirrored front. Nars is always fantastic with their packaging, and it does clasp shut and open up. The clasp is a very nice, really tight clasp. I have a hard time opening it sometimes. When you open it up, it does have a really nice size mirror that does sit up on its own, so you can definitely use it as a vanity if you need to. And then this is the color story in the palette. This does have 16 eyeshadows, and in those 16 eyeshadows, you're seeing 3 different finishes. You have mattes, shimmers, and glitters, and in the shimmer formula they're talking satins as well as, you know, regulatory shimmers. This includes Orgasm, Taj Mahal, and Laguna. These are 3 face powders that they have in their collection. So if you already have these blush and bronzers, you already have 3 of those shades. But what I would say is the Laguna in here, I feel like looks way different than the Laguna looks on my face. The Laguna in here is on my eye look today, and I think that it's just a little bit more warm tone, almost pink, pinker than the actual Laguna bronzer is. I wouldn't necessarily say that Orgasm in this palette is any different than Orgasm the blush. I do think that Laguna is. This is a neutrals palette with some bronzes and some pinks for its color story. So this is the neutral palette of my dreams because it's got a lot more pink and bronze than it does browns. But I love the browns in this palette, just not gonna lie. This does have talc in many of its shades. So if talc is something that bothers you, this is not going to be the palette for you. There's a handful of shades that do not have talc in this eyeshadow palette. This is a limited edition palette with limited edition shadows, and it is currently no longer for sale on the Ulta.com website, but I do know that there are some stores that still have the palette up for sale, and I do know that this is still for sale on Nars, and I think it's still for sale on Sephora at Kohl's, and maybe still for sale at Sephora. This does have a 12-month shelf life, and every single shadow in this palette performed so well. I venture to say that Nars might land into some of my favorite eyeshadows, if I'm honest. This was the first time I have ever tried a Nars eyeshadow palette, and I am not disappointed. It reminded me a lot of Natasha Denona. It reminded me a lot of maybe even sometimes a better version of some of the Natasha Denona shadows. The one thing that I did not like about this palette is there are 2 shades in here, this one here and this one here, that do not perform on the eye the color that they are in the pan. This one is quite a bit darker than this like peachy, almost beige that it looks in the pan, and this one is quite a bit more coral than it is this pink that it looks. And when you go onto Nars's website and you look at the description of them, they do call this shade here a dirty peach shade, and I would say that that's accurate. I wrote it down as a dingy pinky peach matte. It's definitely a dirty peach. Definitely. So like I said, every single shadow in this palette worked so very well. There was very little fallout. It took next to no blending for them just to all just kind of magically appear on my eyes the way I really wanted them to appear. And on this eye specifically, I have this section in my eye where this is my better eye as far as lid space goes. I think that you guys can see when I look at you straight on, this eye over here is shaped just differently. It's got a little bit more almond shape, and it's got a little bit more hood to it. Like I try to get them to look the same always, but this one always looks just better than this eye. But this eye has the most lid space, so I wish I had more lid space on this eye like I have on this eye. But also, one of the things that I don't like about this eye is that there is this section in my eye skin right here that I believe, because I'm aging, you know, I am 45 years old, because I have aging skin, it like skips, the blend kind of skips in this area, and I'm constantly battling trying to get it blended out in that area. These shadows, I did not even have to pause. I didn't have to work too hard. I didn't have to get them, like, put them on a brush, pat them on there, and then blend them over a little bit, lighter touch to them. I didn't have to do any of that. I didn't have to work so hard. They just blended right over the top of that natural skip in my skin that appears in many other shadows. And I think that that's why these remind me so much of the Natasha Denona shadows, because I have that same experience with Natasha Denona. I also have that same experience with, you know, ABH, but ABH falls out all over the place. These didn't really fall out. There was next to no fallout except for in the more glittery shades from this palette. All are super smooth to the touch, and all are super smooth to the touch, not only in touch, but also upon application. They just went on like butter. Had super opaque pigment from the very beginning. The pigmentation was there, but wasn't hard to blend out if I needed to. You know how you have some of those shadows that once you place it, like, it's going to stay there, it's going to hold on to that one spot for dear life, and you struggle to blend. I didn't see that at all with any of these shadows. These are very buildable. There is no voiding and no patchiness that occurs as you're blending these shades, and they build on top of each other or on top of other shadows as I paired them with this, you know, from shimmer to matte, matte to shimmer. Like, there was no problems that I had when utilizing this palette. I was actually shocked. There's always, when you're trying a new brand, there's always like this thing in your brain that's like, okay, we're going to pick apart everything about this so that we can try and conquer whatever it is that we've just picked apart. Or like some questionability about whether this is really going to work for you or not. I really just didn't have anything to pick apart about this palette. I really didn't have anything that I could try and conquer, if that makes any sense. It performs well both with or without primer. I know that there were a couple days out in my market that I wore it without a primer because I just wanted to get it onto my eyes quickly. I put on everything else, forgot about eye primer, went straight into my eyes and was like, dang it, I forgot eye primer, but it lasted really well. It did a really good job. I could get simple, everyday, like nothing, one shadow eye looks, and I could get really dramatic, full on beautiful eye looks from this as well. And I did love partnering it with this because the only deep eyeshadow in this palette really is this one here. You could go this one here also. It is a little bit deeper than the rest of them, but this one is kind of a shimmer and this one is a matte-ish formula. So I legitimately saw 10 hours of wear out of every look that I did with this palette, and that 10 hours was because that's how long it was before I decided to take the shadow off versus how long it lasted. And let me tell you, it's been 104 degrees, so it's been hot, I've been sweaty, it's been, you know, muggy here, and these shadows still lasted. So kudos to Nars. This is a really great palette, and I'm super sad that it's not still for sale in many locations, but it is still one that if you want to pick it up, I think it's a good palette to pick up. I think that I will have my eye on Nars for future palettes that Nars has to offer. I do have another Nars eyeshadow palette, if I'm honest, but it's a special edition palette and I won't use it. It's an Andy Warhol palette, and I think I told you guys that when I pulled this in, but I won't use it. But I will have, and it's super old, but I will have my eye on Nars for future palettes. And here's what I would say that drives me nuts about them. They push this stuff out and it's all limited edition, and then they pull it off the shelves and you're SOL. So if you want to act on an eyeshadow palette from Nars, you have to like be quick about it because they're all of their eyeshadow. They don't have any eyeshadow palettes on their website that I could see, maybe some 6-pan ones, but no like bigger eyeshadow palettes that have more that are on the website anymore. The other thing that I can say is that these pans are pretty small. I mean, 0.03 ounces is pretty small for a pan. It is kind of expensive at $59, but this is $59 for 20 shades of can do anything that you need them to do. Can be a night look, can be a day look, really beautiful, warm tone, neutral shadows. This is $42 for 4. So you pick and choose your battles, I guess. But I do think that this is a bit expensive, but I also think that I've spent way more for way less shadows. So there's that. I would repurchase this palette in a heartbeat, knowing what I know now. And it is a palette that I can honestly tell you, I am sad that I waited this long to try Nars, because Nars has had some really beautiful eyeshadow palettes that I've wanted to try in the past. I just haven't. And I think that the biggest reason why I haven't is because of the price point, which doesn't make any sense to me, you guys, because I pay $65 for Natasha Denona 15-pan. I pay, you know, $129 for Natasha Denona 15-pan large size palettes. Granted, the pan sizes are much bigger than this, but I've also paid $125 for Pat McGrath. I've paid $65 for a quad from Pat McGrath. Why was I not going to pay $59 for an eyeshadow palette by Nars? I have no idea. But honest to God, Nars is recently a brand that's been on my radar, because I think for the first time in the last 12 months, I also tried Orgasm, and I also tried Laguna, and Laguna became one of my favorite. I panned a Laguna this year. Granted, a little baby guy, but I panned a Laguna bronzer this year. Nars has recently become a brand on my radar, and I just can't be happier that I have this palette, that I bought this palette. So I am going to swatch these for you, and then we will pick a new palette and get you out of here. The first one I have here is Isla. Isla is a light tan matte. It does have a little bit of a peachy shift to it. It is in my eye look today, and I think it looks a lot more deep than what it does in the pan. This is one of those shadows that for me was like a sneak attack, because it definitely does not look this deep in the pan. Then we have this one, which is called Crate, or Crete maybe. It is a soft rosy gold shimmer. I would say this is more of a satin, to be honest. It's very, very smooth. It goes onto an eye look smooth. You can use a brush with this. You could use it as a matte if you wanted to in an eye look. I think it performs well as a matte as well, but I don't know who would be using. I mean, I use this in my brow bone a lot, and it was just beautiful. Then we have this one here, which is the other one that I think was like sneak attack. It is called Spiaga Rosa, and it is a dingy peach matte. It looks a little more pink in the pan, but it's definitely peachy in tone. And paired with the browns, it almost looks orange. And then we have Orgasm, a peachy pink gold shimmer. I should say peachy pink with gold shimmer. Okay, then we have Laguna. And like I said, this is a different shade of Laguna than what is the bronzer. This is a light, like rosy brown, and it's a satin, I do believe. It's very sheeny, very shiny. Not quite a shimmer, but definitely not a matte. Then we have Satisfy, which is a butter yellow metallic. Then we have Palmetto. Palmetto is an orange copper. Then we have Komodo Island. Komodo Island is a red-brown base with gold glitter metallic. All of those are very, very smooth, no glitter fallout or anything like that. All of these down here, except for Orgasm, are also very, very smooth. There's no like fallout with them. Orgasm does have a slight bit of fallout to it, but not like horribly bad. It's just like finely milled gold glitter flecks. This one is called Palmas. Palmas is a medium like yellow toned brown, and it is a matte. Then we have Birds of Paradise, which is a dark like peachy rose gold. Taj Mahal. Taj Mahal is a beautiful dark orange satin. Then to finish off the top 3 rows, I'm going to put this one here. This one is called Love on Fire, and it is a red copper with gold glitter, red glitter, orange glitter. I would say that this one is more glitter than it is pigment. This is a beautiful shadow for like tapping on to any eye look. It does bring a lot of value to this palette and just is so impactful in an eye look. It's just so pretty in an eye look with all the different tones of shimmer in it, with all the different tones of glitter. Like no matter where you move your eye, it almost looks like a multi-chrome on your eye look. It is so, so pretty. And then the 4 last ones I have for you are this one here, which I think is called Tiki How. And it is kind of a milky orange, red, brown. And that one is a matte. Then we have Summer Moon, which is a rose colored metallic. Then we have Bad Intentions, which is a rich red plum metallic. I think it reminds me of like a burgundy. It's so, so pretty. And then we have the deepest one in the palette, which is called Fetish. And this one I think wants to be a matte. I think it also wants to be almost black. They have it described as a deep espresso. I have it described as a deep cooler brown. It is a matte-ish. It's kind of satiny. It does have a little bit of a sheen to it, but it also functions very well as a matte in an eye look. You guys, I could not be happier with having this palette in my collection. I know that there doesn't appear to be a whole lot of depth in this eyeshadow palette, just me swatching it. But man, it really does have a lot of depth to it. And it really is beautiful shadows that just go on to your eyes and just perform. I mean, they just are beautiful. And I hope that you got to see a little bit of that in the swatches. Like, I'm not the best, you know, YouTuber out here. I don't do the best swatches. Some of the other things that I really love about this palette is that it is a very warm tone palette, but it's not so warm that you look sick when you wear it. You know, sometimes warm tones and certainly oranges and pinks, when you put them on your eyes, you can tend to look a little bit ill. I don't think that this palette leans that way because there's just so much nuance to it. I also think that the fact that these kind of shades perform as good as they do with a primer, without a primer, is a good thing. Not a lot of people are into primers, and there are definitely some shadow palettes out there that require an eye primer to make everything like work as long as you want it to, or perform in the way that you need it to, because you maybe are, you know, not great at blending or whatever the case may be. I also love the clasp on this, even though it's kind of a pain in the ass because I did have a hard time getting it open sometimes myself. It is a really strong clasp, so it's a really great eyeshadow palette to take with you on the go, and there are 16 shadows in here. I do think that it's got a wide variety of shadows in it, enough that you couldn't possibly get bored with it, even if it were your only eyeshadow palette in your, you know, plethora of eyeshadow palettes. But I also love this palette because I specifically think of it as a perfect partner for the Natasha Denona bronze palette, because it's one of my favorite palettes. I love orange, red, you know, purple, pink eye looks on me, but it doesn't have enough mattes in my opinion, and this has a lot of mattes. Honestly, these 4 right here are all mattes. This is a matte. This functions as a matte, even though I think it has a little bit of sheeniness to it. It's a wonderful matte. This is kind of matte-ish. It's got a lot of mattes in it. There are 4, 5, 6, 7 mattes in this, which means there's about 9-ish shimmers, but a lot of those shimmers are also pretty satin. So, and I will use a satin as a matte in an eye look. I really love this palette, and I think it would perfectly pair with my Natasha Denona bronze, and I will probably pull that out and try it here one of these days. So I love this palette. I think it's a great palette to pick up. And that is all I have to say about Nars. I am shocked about Nars. I am in love with their eyeshadow formula, and they will be on my radar in the future. Il Makiage, also shocked. I'm going to be keeping my eye on them for a minute. If it is the foundation I think it is, I've always been intrigued by it, but I don't know that I need another foundation. I don't know that I need another eyeshadow palette if we're honest, but that is my weak spot. So I will be keeping an eye on them for sure. I'm no longer getting beauty boxes, so I'm going to have to pick up all this stuff on my own these days, and that's totally fine with me, but I would totally purchase out of my own pocket both of these palettes all over again. I did purchase this one. This I got in a beauty box, but I would totally purchase these all over again. So I definitely would recommend them to you. And it's not just a one and done recommendation, you guys. I did use this solid, just these 2 eyeshadow palettes for the last week. So let me know if you have either one of these palettes. I would be interested to hear your thoughts on those. And with that said, I am going to go pick my other palette for next week, and I will be right back. I might be crazy sauce, but I'm going to do 3 different palettes this week. And the reason why is because these are 3 palettes that I really want to get some use out of, but also I'm trying to like barrel through my quads, right? We talked about this in the last one, and I want to use this quad because I recently looked it up and found out that it's a $20 quad, and I'm like, what? Like, that's crazy sauce, considering that I'm pretty sure it came from Walmart because my aunt got it for me. So there's that. I am going to be using the Reina Ribalde 4Play Wet Dry Eye Color quad in Oaxaca, which is this guy. Really beautiful deep blues, kind of a periwinkle, kind of a white, and these all appear to be mattes. Maybe satins. These 2 might be satins, but these all appear to be mattes. I also want to incorporate that palette with this one, which is my Wayne Goss Luxury Eye Palette in Imperial Topaz, which looks like this. Very neutral color story, so blues, periwinkles, neutrals. This appears to be mostly mattes also. I do think that these 2 might be satins, but these 3 appear to be mattes, and this one is like a shimmer, right? So I want to get some use out of this Wayne Goss palette, and I can't use this palette on its own. I just can't. I could never make this work for me for a week without being bored with it, which says a lot about the palette in a nutshell, but because I have, 10 shades here that are almost entirely matte, I wanted to bring in an almost entirely shimmer palette, and it is a palette that has been in my collection for so long. I have watched friends of mine pan this palette in entirety over the last several years, and this is the Tarte Make Believe in Yourself palette. And I picked this up when it first came out. So this is an old eyeshadow palette in my collection. This shade here is the only matte in this palette, and the rest of these are shimmers. So I don't know. I kind of think I've got a good thing going right now. I have just about 20 shades in the lineup for the week. It is exactly the amount of shadows that were in the Nars palette. So I'm also doing SM onboarding with 2 different SMs this week. So I am at home all week. I will have plenty of time to play some more with these palettes. And I figure what these lack in shimmers for color, this will certainly give me in shimmers for color. And I could do anything. Like, I could make some really pretty eye looks with any one of these shimmers and kind of sway an eye look with these mattes in any way I want to. Those are the palettes that I'm going to be using this week. I hope that you're in for it. I would love to see you in next week's video down in the comments section, having a good old time with me. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, I hope that you'll give it a thumbs up. It really does help our channels out here, and I would appreciate it so very much. I hope that if you are one of the 65% out there that's watching me that isn't subscribed, that you choose today to subscribe. I would love to welcome you into my YouTube fam here. Let me know down in the comment section that you've done that. I'd love to welcome you personally. I love every single one of you. If you've made it this far, thank you so very much. And I just appreciate all of you so very much. I hope that you and yours are having a fantastic July. I hope that you all are staying healthy and well, and that you are getting along as best you can in this crazy world that we're living in today. I hope that you are loving each other, but loving each other from afar. And until next time, bye friends.